Every decade has its own style and items that are unique to those that experience them. For kids, it becomes a part of their identity, and later in life, it's easy to look back on some of those things with a sense of nostalgia. But occasionally, we forget about those items. That's where this video comes in handy. Hopefully, it will serve as a gentle reminder for those 80s kids that may have forgotten about these things. Whether you called them flip-flops or thongs, there's no doubt that you had at least one pair. They came in a variety of colors and styles, but the most popular version had a rainbow strap attached to a rainbow sole. Back then, no one was bothered by this shoe unless you wore them too much, and then the strap would wear a sore in between your toes. 80s kids never backed down from danger, and really parents weren't concerned with it either. The Fisher-Price skates were something that many kids had, and they were nearly impossible to skate in. They were designed to go over your shoes, but they didn't always stay on like they should have, and the wheels didn't roll the best either. This led to many falls, but yet kids just got up and gave it another try. And to think kids used these with no helmets, elbow pads, or knee pads. Cookware has changed a lot over the years, but as a kid you always remember the kind that your mom used. Somehow, food just always seemed to taste better when it came out of those Corningware dishes that were white with blue flowers on the side. These dishes also had a distinctive sound when the lid was taken on or off. For 80s kids, Chuck E. Cheese was a magical place. It was a restaurant that catered to kids with pizza and lots of games to play. It was certainly better than the restaurants that your parents liked. Chuck E. Cheese had some of the best games, but they also had some carpet that kids grew to love because it was associated with fun. This restaurant chain was very good at drilling the brand into kids' heads so they would keep coming back. And this carpet was a big part of that. Kids crawled all over it, and they never realized that this carpet was dirtier than they ever realized. Chuck E. Cheese was the perfect place to have a birthday party. There was lots of entertainment for kids, and the best part, there was no mess for parents at home. As we mentioned earlier, the branding was very important. Every kid at the party would wear these birthday hats, and it was all just part of the fun. Texas Instruments was a huge part of the 1980s. They were the makers of the Speak and Spell. That was a 70s toy, but the movie E.T. made it even more popular than ever. But that was not the only popular item to have. The Little Professor calculator helped kids learn how to add, subtract, multiply, and divide. Teachers in the 1980s had a much easier job thanks to Texas Instruments. The 1980s had a cereal aisle that was full of choices, so it was important for cereal companies to find ways to stand out. For kids, it was never really about the flavor, but rather how it looked on the box and what prizes were offered on the inside. Every box that was aimed at kids had a mascot so that they could be easily identified. Cinnamon Toast Crunch was one of the many popular cereals, but they were one of the few that had more than one mascot. They had 3 bakers known as Bob, Quello, and Wendell. In 1991, there was only one mascot, which was Wendell, so 90s kids probably only know him. Cereal companies were not the only food companies that tried to market to kids. Chef Boyardee came out with Smurf ravioli and pasta, which tasted like regular Chef Boyardee. They were just trying to capitalize on the popularity of the Smurfs during the 1980s. The Wham roller racer may look odd to kids today, but for 80s kids, this was a ton of fun. It was another form of entertainment for kids who loved playing outside. This little gem would really pick up speed if you were coming downhill, and once again, no helmet or safety gear required. Back then, you just had to learn how to take a fall. Fast food restaurants were always trying to find ways to entice families to eat out. It seemed like everyone from Hardee's to McDonald's offered collectible glasses that eventually made their way into everyone's home. Usually, these glasses were part of a series, and everyone wanted to complete the set, so they would keep coming back every time a new one came out. Stickers are something that kids of every generation loves. But perhaps there are no other kids that love them as much as 80s kids. Most of them had sticker albums, and they collected any kind that they could get their hands on. There were hologram stickers, puffy stickers, googly-eyed stickers, and even scratch and sniff stickers, just to name a few. It was not uncommon to see kids sniffing folders or anything else that they'd placed those stickers on. The Atari game system, Commodore 64, and Nintendo pretty much ruled the video game market during the 1980s. But there were certainly other options. No matter what you had as a game system, you definitely had to have one of these. This little game switch was necessary to have so that you could hook up your game system and still be able to watch television. Just change it over to what you wanted with a flick of the switch and you were good to go. You might not have had a cat in the 1980s, but there were still some that kids in the 80s knew. There was Sylvester the cat, Garfield, and even Heathcliff. Those were cartoons, but the other cat that everyone knew was Morris the cat, who appeared in all the 9 Lives cat food commercials. He was on television so much that you could not escape seeing him. Vacuum cleaners in the 80s were huge, and many of the ones that parents had were the ones that they probably acquired in the 70s. They were the kind that used vacuum cleaner bags, and sometimes those bags would explode and make a mess everywhere. When the bag was full, it would be thrown out and a new one would be put in its place. When the Dustbuster came out, it became an instant hit because it made cleaning so much easier and less of a hassle. If it was a small mess or something off of the floor, then this was the tool you needed. Just like today, every kid in the 80s wanted a phone of their own. Granted, the phones that kids have today do so much more than what 80s kids' phones did, but that didn't make it any less cool. The Garfield phone was the highly coveted one, but there were a lot of other options. Not every kid was lucky enough to have a phone of their own, but that does not mean that they did not want one. Big wheels have been a popular toy for many kids, and not just 80s kids. They would get ridden on so much that the wheel on the front would eventually wear down and crack. But in the 80s, the big wheel was not the only option. In 1978, the Green Machine was released, and it changed the game in the big wheel market. There was also another option called the Blue Max, and both were really popular with 80s kids. Kids would still pedal the front wheel, but it was stationary. The back 2 wheels would pivot with the push and pull action of 2 levers right in between the rider's legs. When kids would pedal the Green Machine as fast as they could, they would quickly maneuver the levers so that they could slide the Green Machine and then possibly even do a 360-degree turn and keep pedaling. That was something that kids on big wheels just couldn't do. The 1980s was a special decade. It had a little bit of past decades, but it also had some things that led us into the future. Most of us just didn't realize it. As time moves on, it's easy to forget about some of the things that made the 80s what they were. Can you think of any other items that we missed? Let us know in the comments below. As always, thank you so much for watching.